Today's webinar is titled Evaluating the Effectiveness of Your Daily Review Meetings. Presenting the session today is the founder and president of CTPM, Ross Kennedy. Since CTPM's establishment in 1996, Ross has developed an improvement methodology that is centered around progressively developing and engaging all personnel to identify problems at the earliest possible time, solve them to root cause, and share the learning. Over this time, Ross has become recognized as Australasia's leading authority on total productive maintenance and CTPM's Australasian TPM lean approach to operational excellence. So with that being said, let's get started with today's session, and I'll now pass you over to Ross.
Right, thank you, Nelson, and welcome to our webinar today, Evaluating the Effectiveness of Your Daily Review Meetings, and thank you for joining us. The 5 questions I put forward in preparing this webinar are listed there for you, and hopefully the outcome of this will be that you get some ideas that maybe will enhance your current daily review meetings, because what we find just about every site we visit, they have daily review meetings of some sort. What we find intriguing is in a lot of cases, they go through the motions and everyone turns up and everyone collects information and off they go. But whether they are really effective or not is the question we're proposing, I guess, today. So I guess the first thing I just wanted to touch on was, why should effective daily management be important to you? And when I ask this question when I visit sites, I often ask with a few what we call, I guess, slightly emotive questions, but just to get people thinking. For example, are you ever distracted with issues or problems that should not happen if everyone else was doing their work correctly? Do you ever find the same issue or problem repeating themselves? Or have you ever thought what it would be like if every day went to plan and you achieved all you wanted with time to spare? And if you answer yes to any of those, well, hopefully you're in the right place now so that we can share with you some of our learnings on how to make daily management meetings more effective. The other aspect of it is in our model for the 10 integrated ingredients of Australasian TPM for existing equipment, we broke that model up into 10 ingredients, but most importantly 4 phases. The first one being preparation, which is all about freeing up time, because what we find is if effective daily management isn't established, people waste a lot of time running around chasing up issues that should have been resolved in the first place. The other part is obviously stable production plan and improving OEE. But what we often find is that when we visit sites, daily management is an issue that needs to be addressed. I was working with a site in Sydney recently, helping them on their TPM journey. And we started with the classic cross-functional teams, look at a couple of production lines and really understand the OEE improvement, or look at the opportunities for OEE. And that certainly highlighted a lot of improvement opportunities, especially minor unrecorded stoppages. But when we looked further into it, their daily management process was very poor, and one of the key things that came out of the team recommendations was that, one, they should look at daily management and also the way they train their operators. So yeah, it's certainly an issue we do find quite often. So let's just reflect a little bit on the learnings from Toyota and the whole development of lean and TPM very quickly, so we can understand why daily management is so important. And as we all know, after the war, Dr. Edwards Deming was in Japan and was invited to address the Japanese industry leaders about quality. And he had 3 key points regarding quality, which I think you've probably all seen in previous webinars. Focus on the process, not just the activity, apply prevention as source for the process, and recognise the tyranny of time when addressing problems. And by that 3rd point, we mean from the time a quality problem, as in the context of Mr. Deming, the time a quality problem occurs and the time you find out about it, the harder it is to get to the root cause, and obviously it's probably going to cost you a hell of a lot more. And that's why this slide has been around for so long, which is simply saying if you can find the quality problems at the start of the process, when the raw materials are coming in, for example, and fix them, it's minimal cost compared to fixing the problems at the end of the production line, as internally detected, or giving a product defect to a customer, and you have to go out and visit the customer and resolve the issues. So the message was simply find problems at the earliest possible time. So what did that mean? Well, with the whole Toyota production system, it's probably best described as it's got two key components to it. One is about how do we minimize the cost of manufacture, right? That's really what drove it to become more competitive. And it's not cost cutting per se of let's go and cut out people, etc. It's looking at the total cost of manufacture and eliminating all the waste and reducing your lead times, etc., to improve the total cost of manufacture. The second aspect of it is all about human capital development. And this is the aspect I think a lot of people sort of skip over far too lightly, because it's the people, and Toyota learned very early in the piece, the only way they could find their problems at the earliest possible time was to have their frontline people, the operators, for example, finding the problems, and as they would use the term, pull the cord. In other words, if it's not right, stop the process or stop the production line. So people can swarm and assist to get the quality issue resolved immediately. And that's very much based on Dr. Edward Deming's guidance on quality. So operators to identify quality defects. So therefore, production frontline leaders, which are your wages or leading hand type wages people, who can train and develop their operators. That's why they're on wages, so they can operate the equipment to demonstrate how to train the operators to run the equipment to agreed standard to identify quality defects, and when TPM came along, obviously equipment defects. So to develop their frontline people, develop their operators, and develop their frontline leaders, what they learned very rapidly was you needed organisation structure based on no more than 7 direct reports to support the training and development of all personnel, especially their frontline leaders. So, and this is taken from Jeffrey Leiker's book, The Toyota Way, very famous book that came out in 2004, where it showed the typical organisation structure at a assembly plant at Toyota. And you can see we've put in there tier 1, tier 2, tier 3, tier 4, because that's a language a lot of sites use. So the tier 1 is your frontline leader with their 3 to 7 direct reports. In other words, production crew. Then you have your supervisor or level 1 salary person, because everyone, sometimes people are called supervisors, they're called team leaders, they're called coordinators. So basically your first level of salary are the tier 2 people. And then obviously the tier 3 are getting to use, for example, production managers and then site manager. Now at smaller sites, you'd probably only have 3 levels, not 4 levels. But some people look at that and go, ooh, you know, it's not very efficient for labour. You know, you don't have enough people reporting to someone. Well, if you do your numbers and you start off with your teams of 4 to 8, that's your frontline leader and the 7 direct reports max, and they're reporting to a supervisor, and the supervisor has 3 to 7 teams, in other words, 3 to 7 frontline leaders, they can have up to 12 to 56 direct reports or people reporting to them. You'd go to the next level and it's 3 to 7 times. That 12 to 56 becomes 1357, simply because you're adding in the supervisor. So you're up to 39 to 399, and by the time you get to the 4th tier, you're up to 2,800. So it is quite a very efficient structure, but it's absolutely fundamental if you want to develop your people to find problems at the earliest possible time. So what's been that learning in relation to the new role for the production frontline leader? And this is what Toyota learned, that they needed to change the role from the old leading hand, who was the technical go-to person on the line, to actually being a leader and someone who can train and teach and develop the operators to find the problems at the earliest possible time, not just put the tyres on the car, so to speak. So we need operators to monitor quality and equipment conditions while also being able to identify problems and issues at the earliest possible time and get the support when they do find a problem. So again, you want your frontline leader to be available, and only having a span of maximum 7 people, they've got more chance for them to be available to respond rapidly to what the operators find. Hence, recognise the need to change the focus of daily review meetings to support the development of their wages production frontline leaders. And this photo is taken from Sunrise. We were working with quite some years back, but it's where we sort of developed this thinking, and it certainly demonstrated to us the power of this new thinking or new role of production frontline leaders. This was a packing hall at a rice manufacturing plant, and the person in the very front in the white jacket and white hat is the supervisor. And she, when we, 3 months earlier to this, you were up the other end of the room, you're in front of an electronic whiteboard where she would just be asking the questions of the her team leaders or frontline leaders, saying, how did the line go? What about this? What about that? And they're just standing there and sort of hiding, and when required, answering questions. And we said to her at the time, what are we trying to achieve here? Is it just for you to get data out of these people to go up to the managers meeting and look good? Or is it really an opportunity to help develop your frontline leaders to become better leaders? And she certainly twigged to that thinking. We came down the other end of the room, and you look there, this is still work in progress, the boards. But what we're seeing now is that the frontline leader is going through the information, going through what they've put up on the boards, and the people on the right are the support staff, the maintenance people, the planning people, etc. And they're there to help and support the frontline leader. So whole different thinking that took place. The impact over that 3 months, I think OEE went up over 20% on their in their packing hall, which had about 5 major packing lines. So going to another site, and you walk through and you see very impressive daily review meeting boards, and you think, well, these people have, nailed it. However, what we need to do is be able to really look behind the fanciness of what's up there to what's really happening here. And the question I always put to people when I visit sites is, are your daily review meetings held just to comply with policy, you've got to have one, address urgent issues, and gather data to feed up the line? Or are they focused on ensuring your production frontline leaders are getting the support they need to safely achieve the production plan each day to the required standard? And some managers will say, definitely the latter. But when you go and watch what's going on, I think it's very much the former. So what are the daily review meetings that happen at a site or should happen at a site? So again, using the tier 1, tier 2, tier 3, tier 4 structure. And again, for smaller sites, there may only be 3, not 4. Or in some cases, the fourth tier 4 one might be a weekly meeting, not a daily meeting. Right? But down below, the tier 3, 2, 1 should definitely be daily. So the tier 1 is your start of shift meeting, almost like a muster call for your people. What are we all doing for the day? How did we go yesterday? What did we learn, etc.? Are we on track? The tier 2 is the one that's held typically after the lines and the production lines have got stabilised. So it might be an hour after the start of the shift, start of the day. And this is where the team leaders come along and report on how their areas are progressing. Then obviously you'd have this tier 3 meeting with all the managers, maybe 2 hours after start of day. The thing to be mindful of, information flows up. That's the whole idea of starting at the start of the shift. But most importantly, the development process of developing effective daily review meetings, our learning has been, it comes down. Right? The best way for for example, supervisor to learn how to run an effective daily meeting is actually attend a tier 3 meeting with their manager and be taught, and actually as the manager has established the meeting really effectively, have the supervisors take in turn for a week to actually run the manager's meeting to learn how to do it. Then once they're showing their competency, then you get them to set up the tier 2. And then again, the same thing with frontline leaders. So it's very much a development process. And keep in mind, shift handover meetings are a totally different thing, right, than daily review meetings, and need a different agenda and different focus. And in this model, obviously we're not talking about the support department, like the maintenance would have their daily review meeting, for example, the planning people have their daily review meeting, etc. But we're just focusing here on the production. Probably the most important thing is the most important meeting, I believe, of the day is the tier 2 one, because this is where you are actually developing your frontline leaders, and it is also probably the meeting I find done least effectively in most sites, if it's even run at all. So I'll probably be focusing a bit more on this tier 2 meeting concept as we go along. So, do they promote clear accountability? So, an example purpose of a daily review meeting. Obviously, review previous day of operations by area or line. So, you're getting this accountability in there, not just, oh, anyone have a quality problem, anyone have a safety issue, anyone have a quality problem, etc. And list and allocate A, B, and C action items. And again, a lot of sites meetings do not distinguish between what we call A, B, and C action items if required. And what we mean by that is simply A is what do we need to do to fix a problem. So we have a breakdown, okay? What do we have to do to fix the breakdown? Now, often the A action will be done before the meeting, and often may not get listed because it's already been done. The B action is what do we have to do to stop that from happening again? And that's the thing that often doesn't get discussed in a lot of meetings I attend. The C action is, do we need to initiate a root cause analysis, because the B action is not a simple, straightforward action. It's a more complex issue. And we've hit a trigger to say we really need to do a root cause on this so it doesn't come back again. So that's what I mean by ABC. Confirm any changes to production plan or other work plans. Maintenance aren't going to take this machine down now, or if they've got their maintenance plan changed. Review the action boards. Okay, where are we up to with the A and B actions? We tend to put that on one board, and the root cause analysis or the C actions are on a typical board because they have a different time frame and approach. Review parking lot or escalation board. And what we mean by that is sometimes issues come up that can't be handled by the meeting because it's outside the boundaries of the meeting. So therefore, we always recommend you have a board where you list that up, and that issue is escalated by the leader of the meeting to the next tier of meeting, and they can then come back and report back on that issue, and it's not lost. Obviously, you provide a communications update on what's going on in the day, if there's any visitors, etc. And at the end, we always recommend you conduct a very quick, not let's all discuss long issues, but very precise roundtable, any other issues that need to be noted, actioned or whatever. And the most important thing to remember, a daily review meeting is not a place to solve problems. It is to allocate what actions for people to go away and solve problems. So do your meetings promote clear accountabilities? So this is a couple of examples from the tier 2 meetings. On the left is an agenda written onto a clock. I thought very innovative. The improvement coordinator this site that we visited had this great clock, and they were very proud of it. And the idea was, okay, you start your meeting at the start of the hour, and first few minutes you talk about safety, then you talk about quality, then you talk about supply chain, etc., which is all very lovely, but there's no accountability because, again, the meeting is run where the person leading the meeting goes, anyone have a safety issue, anyone got a quality issue, etc. Right-hand side, this is a more detailed structured approach, obviously. Agenda. Now, you may be able to see above all the activities, there's a little thing about the production areas. Now, this is a post-production area. Is a pie making plant up in Sydney, and the post-production is after the pies have been made and frozen, they pop out of the freezer and they have to be wrapped and packaged, obviously, before they go off to the customers. So they had a wrapping line and 2 packing lines. So you had 3 frontline leaders reporting to the supervisor. So the idea was that each frontline leader would report on their area and how it went for the 7 key items there. And if I expand that up a bit for you to see, each area leader, frontline leader, would explain how did their safety go, how did their quality go, their customer satisfaction or delivery, inventory, and they were the prompting questions that they would be using. By exception, not an issue, move on. And this is where you support this with a scoreboard, where we use the red and green. Green being I achieved target, red I did not meet my target. Let's talk about what can we do to help you achieve your target. So again, it's all focused on developing a frontline leader by making them responsible for the total performance of their area of responsibility. Then the back part of the meeting is just by the chair going through the planning and scheduling and review action lists, etc. So if you want to be innovative like the first improvement coordinator, you could create a clock, and I've just done using that agenda. If you want to be just graphical or visual, you can create it the same way, where the time is each area talks, not a general approach. Are the right questions asked? Now, we have a scoreboard, and again, this is from that post-production area, where you have on the left-hand side your key success factors, so safety, quality, customer satisfaction, inventory, etc. Then you have your measures that you're focusing on that are relevant for the areas. You have your targets, and then you've got the 3 areas. And the frontline leaders would come in before the meeting and right up there in either green for yes, we achieved the target, or red if I didn't meet the target. And if it's red, they're the things we talk about. And you note a little bit in that reasons for missed targets. And then you have your action list, and we made it very clear, is this an A problem? Is it A action, I should say, or is this a B action? To get people to start thinking about, hey, it's not just fixing the problems, it's how do we stop them from happening again? Now, here's an example from one of those meetings and getting the right questions going. They had a 30-minute delay and a little gearbox on one of their packaging or wrapping lines failed. And the 30 minutes was the delay that was recorded, because it actually happened 30 minutes before the end of the shift. I think it probably went a little bit over the shift to fix, but that was the end of the day. So as far as lost time was concerned, it was 30 minutes. So at the morning meeting, what would be the question? So the first one, did we fix it? The answer, yep, we had a spare, so only minimal downtime. We got in there, we got it fixed, all good. Too often at a daily meeting, that's all that gets asked. And what the effective meetings are all about is asking the right questions. So the second question you'd ask is, how do we stop it from failing again? The possible answer could be, we introduce or review our preventive maintenance plan, i.e. when we inspect the gearbox, or our predictive maintenance plan, when do we do condition monitoring on the gearbox or check the oil, sampling or whatever, or vibration. So we pick up before it fails. Very good. You instigate that. Well done. So we don't have the fail again. But then we get to the third question, and this is one that is really very rarely asked. Do we need to do a root cause analysis? And this comes back to what are our triggers for root cause analysis? And some companies, and ones we certainly deal with, we suggest that there should be a trigger about, did we get the maximum life out of the equipment? So here, did we get the expected life from the gearbox? The answer, only 4 years old. Should have lasted 10 years on that new piece of equipment. Why did we only get 4 years out of it before it failed, not the 10? And this is where you need root cause analysis and create a cause and effect diagram, look at all the variables, and take the key variables and do the 5 whys on them. Because there's a number of reasons. It could be design errors, it could be installation errors, and that's why it failed early. It could be that the oil's getting contaminated in the gearbox because someone's blasting with high pressure water to clean the plant down, and it's blasting contaminant into the bearings of the gearbox through the seals. Could be the thing gets buried in contamination. It could be people overloading the plant. They're putting more load because they've introduced new products. So this is why you need a root cause analysis. If we don't do one, 4 years later, we'll know it's about to fail, so we'll do our preventive predictive maintenance on it, and we'll go and replace it through a shutdown, which is great, but we're still only getting 4 years out of it. So our materials cost for maintenance double, etc. So our maintenance costs are going to be a lot higher because we haven't asked that question. So actions classified into the 3 criteria. And again, this is sort of a flow chart we put together to help people understand just what's really involved in effective daily management. So is top line in the blue, develop your leaders, review performance by area, by responsibility, so the relevant leader, identify the actions and monitor the actions. So identify the actions, you've got your A action, fix it, and then that leads into the B action, stop it from happening again. Easy fix, great, all done. Or like we saw in that example, was there a trigger? Yeah, we only got 4 years out of it. Okay, we need to do root cause, we need policies. Maybe a person can only be allocated 1 root cause to work on at a time, therefore it goes on a priority list if no one's available. If not, they get onto it, moves on to the monitoring, and then you've got your monitoring process of how you are going. There's some very quick examples of tier 2 meetings in place, stand-up meeting, and the board. Again, a lot of initially we use laminated sheets or either A3 or A4 for run charts, etc. And you can, very quickly enhance change, because in the early days we find often people twig things and get things a lot more focused as they go. Here's another example, another site. And again, you can see the red and the green. This is probably a clearer picture of the scoreboard. To the right of the scoreboard, the action list. Underneath that is some planning information. But the interesting point here is on the left-hand side, you can clearly see the run charts, because what we recommend is each day you review your daily performance and rub it out and put the next day's performance on, but you don't want to lose that information. So you put it onto a run chart, typically goes for a month. And you can see trends. And also at the end of the month, you can see what the average performance was, so that you make sure your target is attuned, because what you're trying to do is anytime you don't meet that average, you've got to stop it from happening again, and that way the average keeps getting better or going up. So you keep tuning your targets. But the one on the left, the interesting one, when we saw the trends on the quality on the left top, what was causing it? Asked questions. Their production planning was all over the place, and this was an area of moulding lines, making helmets, safety helmets of different colours, shapes. As soon as you started changing with the production plan and having short runs, it became a lot of waste in changeover material from setting the thing back up again. So by getting this in place, it became obvious to management the next improvement cycle they had to focus on stabilising the production plan through flow logic, which they did do and had very big gains on. So finally, just to finish up, would a rating sheet be helpful? We've developed a rating sheet we use all the time when we're working with clients called, it's just simply a daily review meeting rating, where you can use it for tier 1, 2 or 3 meetings, and it gives a score. There's 10 elements or 10 parts to it. On the left-hand side is just an explanation of it, which is on the back page. Often when we first start with a client, and especially at the tier 2 level, your scores are probably somewhere between 10 and 20%. By the end of getting things established properly, we expect at least 80 plus, and we get that. And so that's not a bad sort of give you a baseline, give you some target to aim for. The other, a little bit more sophisticated rating sheet we use is our effective daily management instance to excellence, and this is looking at the whole 7 key elements of effective daily management, or we call it reactive improvement. And you'll see that the 7 elements are supportive organisation structure, which I've talked about, effective frontline leaders, which we're certainly talking about, appropriate measures linked to your key success factors, structured daily review meetings, visual information centres, frontline problem solving, root cause analysis capability, and finally the ability for rapid sharing of learning. So again, that's another one where on the left hand side is pretty innocence, on the right hand side what we'd expect in operational excellence practice, and you just pick on the scale of 0 to 10 where you are. And again, it gives you a baseline and gives you something to strive towards. So hopefully it's given you some ideas, thoughts about and reflections on your existing daily review meetings. Hopefully there's some ideas there that can help you to make them more effective. And with that, and I'll apologise for 5 minutes over, we'll go for question time. But while we're just waiting for the questions to come in, I thought I'd just throw this slide up. We're all very excited here at CTPM with just introducing our online self-paced training courses. So we've taken our 2-day public workshop, which we've been running for 20, 25 years now, and keep updating as we keep learning. That workshop, I think we've had over 2,800 people attend from all around Australia and in Asia, 580 companies. And what we've done now is moved it into this online self-paced training that you can do. So if everyone's interested, I know trying to go to a public workshop's not quite the thing to do in the COVID-19 environment. So this is a way of still getting it, and it is an accredited yellow belt training course. So with that, back to questions and Nelson, please.
Okay, thank you very much, Ross. So if you have any questions, please type it in the question panel. I think we do have a question from Jeremy. He's got his hand raised. Let me just unmute Jeremy to see. Jeremy, you there?
Thanks, Nelson. Ross, can you hear me?
Yes,
yep.
All good.
Great. Fantastic. Do you ever incorporate a weekly review graph to accompany the daily trend graph?
So we have the daily trend graph. Yes.
Do you also incorporate a weekly performance review graph to accompany and embellish and keep track of improvement for greater than the 1 month period that you talk about for the daily review graphs? Do you see that has a place in that process?
Yeah, it certainly has, especially at tier 3 level meetings or site level, where you're at the site level. We certainly encourage the site leadership team to establish a weekly run chart, because most site leadership teams work on monthly basis, and we just find that's all very nice for financials because you only get them once a month, but all the other key success factors need to be monitored on a weekly basis. So at a site level, the site leadership team, we strongly encourage a scoreboard that has monitored what's happening on a weekly basis. And then when you get down to your tier 2, obviously tier 2, tier 1 meetings, you're doing it on a daily basis.
So you're not reviewing the weekly graph at a tier 2 meeting typically, or you're leaving that for tier 3?
Yeah, leave that for tier 3. The tier 1, tier 2 meetings, we tend to look at the graph that goes for the month and what has been happened for that month, and that's what we tend to find. Is the tier 2 people tend to be more focused on daily and weekly type focus, not or monthly. How do we go for the month, not how do we go for 6 months, 12 months.
Thanks.
Okay, I think that's only. Thanks, Jeremy, there for the question. Doesn't seem like we have any more questions, so I'll just remind everyone that a link to the recording of today's webinar will be provided in a follow-up email. So please feel free to watch it again or share it with your colleagues. And in that email, you also get a link to download the daily review meeting rating sheet that Ross talked about at the end. So that brings us to the end of today's session. We hope you took away some key learnings from the session. We encourage you to complete the feedback form after the session to let us know how it went and if you have any topic suggestions for future webinars. Thanks again, everyone, for attending, and we hope you enjoy the rest of your day. Goodbye for now.
Bye, everyone.